Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at the height of the lockdown restrictions in 2020, my constituent, who's worked for the NHS for over 30 years, was diagnosed with a tumour on her spine. Whilst in hospital undergoing painful surgery, her family obeyed the rules and didn't visit her. Mr. Speaker, in the last few minutes, a photo has emerged of the Prime Minister in Downing Street on the 15th of December 2020, surrounded by alcohol, food and people wearing tinsel. It looks a lot like one of the Christmas parties he told us never happened. So for the sake of my constituent and the sacrifices she made, will the Prime Minister be referring this party to the police, as it's not one of the ones already being investigated?
Prime Minister.
I'm afraid, first of all, I'm very sorry about his constituent and for the difficulties that she's been through, and I understand very much her feelings, Mr. Speaker. But in what he has just said, I'm afraid he is completely in error.
Michael Longby. Thank you. Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Was the Business Secretary right to say that fraud is not something that people experience in their day-to-day lives?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, of course, this government and this country despises those who defraud people, and that's why we crack down on fraudsters, Mr. Speaker, and we've strengthened our anti-fraud task force, who are bringing forward an economic crime bill, Mr. Speaker, but we also attach huge importance to tackling neighbourhood crime and crimes of violence, Mr. Speaker, and I'm very pleased that those crimes are down 17%, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's answer's got a big hole in it. We've had lockdowns for the last 2 years. 2 crimes that people could commit were online fraud and throwing parties. And so far as I can see, the numbers for both of those have gone through the roof. But I was asking the Prime Minister about the 14,000 cases of fraud a day. Many older people duped out of hard-earned savings. And the Business Secretary casually suggests on TV, don't worry, it's not real crime. There's a crime gang in Manchester, Mr. Speaker, nicking cars and shipping them around the world, all financed by COVID loans from the taxpayer. And what's the Chancellor's response? Write off £4 billion in losses and block an investigation by the National Crime Agency. His cabinet turning a blind eye to scammers. Is it any wonder that his anti-fraud minister realised no one in government seemed to care and threw in the towel?
Prime Minister.
No, Mr. Speaker, because what we're doing is tackling crime across the board, and that's why we're investing more in tackling fraud. Mr. Speaker, but we're also tackling the neighbourhood crime that is of such massive psychological damage to people in this country, tackling knife crime, tackling burglary, tackling crimes of violence in the street, Mr. Speaker, with tougher sentences, which they voted against, by the way, Mr. Speaker, and putting more police out on the street, Mr. Speaker. And the reason we're able to afford it, Mr. Speaker, is because we have a strong economy and we're coming back strongly from COVID, and that is thanks to the big calls that this government got right.
Yes, Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, his anti-fraud minister quit, saying the failure of government to tackle fraud was so egregious that he had to, and this is his words, smash some crockery to get people to take notice. Well, it seems that the Prime Minister hasn't noticed the broken plates and the shattered glass all around him. It's almost as if he's been completely distracted for weeks. Talking of scams, households are going to have to fork out an extra £19 billion on their energy bills. The government is insulting people's intelligence by pretending it's giving them a discount. But it's not. It's a con. A buy now, pay later scheme, a dodgy loan, not a proper plan. Mr. Speaker, he shakes his head. So let me put this in language you might understand. When his donors give him cash to fund his lifestyle and tell him he has to pay it all back later, are they giving him a loan or a discount?
Mr. Speaker, our plan Our plan to tackle the cost of living is faster, more efficient and more generous than anything that they have set up, Mr. Speaker. We've lifted the living wage by record amounts. We've cut the effective tax for people on universal credit, Mr. Speaker, and we're now setting out a fantastic plan to help people with the cost of energy, Mr. Speaker. And it is more generous and more effective than anything Labour have set out. And the only reason we can do it's £9.1 billion, Mr. Speaker. It's huge sums that we're using to help people across the country. And the only reason we can afford it, Mr. Speaker, is because we have a strong economy.